Hello everyone and welcome to the Grove. My name's Hawk and today I have a build showcase, specifically the cabins for a Minecraft event that I'm hosting for Halloween. And because it's going to be a camp themed minigame, I of course needed to make different themed cabins for the map. So there was more variation that, and I wanted to test out the different color palettes. So you have two lines. You have first the lines where I just focused on the palettes, and then this lane is, well, street is just for the fully decorated ones. Although I did forget about the shulker boxes because I didn't think about them until afterwards, and they're going to fix a game mechanic they'll have within the murder mystery themed event. But anyway, I'll be using the brown terracotta cabin as sort of like the explanation of the general layout. So you have the banners and the shulker boxes and the lanterns in front, and you also have the cabin sign. All cabins have a unique name for the cabin that's not just the brown cabin. It's more unique because I wanted to make it a little more fun and special. And when I went to like a kids camp when I was younger, they had special names. So I decided, hey, why not make ones for my cabins? And in this specific tent, this cabin, you have the standard carpet, the crafting tables, double chests, which are actually supposed to be not trap chests. They're supposed to be regular chests. So I'm going to have to make sure to switch them out when I add them to the map itself. But yes, every sort of camper gets a desk, a bed, double chest for their items, and a crafting table. And then the whole cabin also gets a carpet. And then you also have a decoration about that specific camper based on the color. So I remembered the dark green from the farmland, so I decided to do sort of a compost / farmland person. So this camper might be like a farm or agriculture student or camper. And then this one's more note blocks because they had related. It just made sense. The color worked well, and I also added a barrel for maybe CD storage. So, and then of course you have the banners, and that is it for this the dark brown cabin. Then you have the Kaver cabin, which is the black cabin, and of course the shulker boxes aren't there. I already had the light added, like saved the light matic, and I don't feel like going through and changing all of them right now. So right now they just won't have the shulker boxes. Kaver is supposed to be like cave spelunking, and then I just added the K to make it a little more fancy. So I have the black stone because it's a good dark stone for the black cabin. And then I have this adventurer who has a wither skull and a dragon's head, as well as a smithing table. And then I also have an anvil that they share between them, as well as a special anvil, smithing table, and cauldron for this person who just sort of probably likes blacksmithing or some other related activity. So that's the Kaver cabin. And then the Perse cabin. So this is actually supposed to be the gray cabin, or how I like to think about it, the dark gray cabin. Although the nether brick combined with the gray, it just ends up being more of like a pomegranate or plum. And Persephone from Greek myths ended up eating a pomegranate, which is one of the reasons she stays in the underworld. So I thought it would be pretty cool to tie that in. So that's where you get Perse from, and that's why it's spelled with an S and not a C. And for the actual decoration, you have this person who likes sort of redstone with this observer, but also just likes smithing stuff. So you have the blast furnaces, And then on the other side, you have someone who's more interested in brewing and also enhancing gear. So maybe more of like a crafter, because they're gray. And the splotches of gray actually pulls out the gray instead of just this purple nether brick. So, and this is a good example of me paying more close to the intention of what the color actually is versus the color that, what the block color is compared to what the block color is named. This is, of course, not the case with this next house, which is the Samon cabin, which is, and the name comes from the word for salmon in English, but it takes away the L, because why not? And this one, I actually used the regular stone, so then I could pull in the light gray that the terracotta is supposed to be. So, but then I used for the wood type, I used the pink, since it works well with the light gray terracotta. And so I have the polished, the smooth stone, and then I also have this, I think this is, yeah, this is a dropper, but then you also have a brewing stand because there is gray in the base, and that's why you saw it in the other house. And then you also have a skull on type of a lodestone, so definitely an adventurer type. And then you also have another person who likes working with tools, so another craftsman. So you have the stone cutter, you have the grindstone, and then you also have a lodestone to keep in that gray. So that is the gray cabin, or light gray specifically. Then you have the white cabin, which has sort of pink, and it is called the Zopal cabin because the Z in quartz, you have the Z inside of it at the end of the word, and then opal is a white gemstone in real life, or is at least a gemstone that is linked towards white. And I also used diorite for the walls because I needed like a fence type, but didn't want to use birch. So on this side you have the calcite and the spiderweb, so even more of an adventurer or just someone who does not clean very well. And then you also have someone who works with the loom, so you have wool blocks and you have like a banner hanging here. So that's a Zopal cabin. And this cabin, as well as the yellow cabin, actually have an alternate design, which I will go into after I give an example for this cabin, because the Sandie cabin is the final design that I'm going to use for the yellow cabin, although I do have a version where it uses the bamboo, and Sandie is just from sandstone. And so you have this sort of bees, and then and these are supposed to look like filing cabinets, and then you also have the chiseled bookstone and the lectern. So there's that. Although, if we look over here, we can see that the Bambilion cabin is the alternate version of the design. So I used the bamboo wood type that was newly introduced into Minecraft in one of the newer updates. Except if you go inside, there's just a lot of yellow, and so I decided to go with the sandstone so it lets your eyes rest for a little bit. But I did have the bees, and then I also added a Fletcher's table and the chiseled bookshelves. I will be adding a fletching table into the actual regular cabin, but I just haven't done that yet because I haven't placed it into the world yet. And over here you also have the Pastelle cabin, which actually uses the white terracotta. Pastelle pink is supposed to be the name that's referencing, although technically it qualifies as a white cabin because of the terracotta. And so in here you have the pink coral, and then you have more coral in here. So that's the block versus the actual non-fan coral area, just the brain coral. And then you also have just a potted pink bush, rose bush, as well as a cherry blossom sapling within a pot. So that's the pink pastel cabin. But if we go back to the others, then we can find that we are now at the Terry cabin. So Terry is short for Terracotta, so this is because this is the regular Terracotta cabin, although it is also considered a brown cabin, but it's light brown cabin for the actual inclusion into the camp itself, because I still want to include it since it's the base Terracotta. And so I use the mud bricks to pull in the this lighter brown color, as well as the jungle blocks. And of course I had to use the pottery because that's very related to the terracotta blocks, and so I also put a flower pot in this so it matches and so we can get a little flower on top of it. Although I also have somebody who works with the loom on the other side. The next house is the Akashi house. So it's the Akashi cabin. The name Akashi actually comes from the way you spell acacia in English, but it's also specifically off of the actual how you pronounce it. So acacia, so I took out the two C's off of what specifically the sound makes. So you have the hard C at the first, so you have a K, and then you have the sh sound replacing the C, and then I just took off the A to make the Akashi cabin. And so it's off of acacia, which is used as the orange wood accent. So you have the copper blocks and a brewing stand for this person who's more on the academic side, as well as an adventurer who has like a piglin head, a jack-o'-lantern, a shroom light, as well as some glowberry vines. I did replace the tops, the lanterns on the ceiling, to be shroom lights so that it could light up the room instead. And I did this for a few other of the cabins as well, just because I wanted to, and because I have the block available to me, and so then you have a more special light source inside the cabins. Moving on to the ruby cabin, so this is the red cabin. You have the netherrack flooring, just because it adds sort of like this darker red and textured floor, so then it's not just this red nether brick on the floor, so it just gives a little more texture to the room. And for this one, this person is a redstone individual, although in the actual build itself, this is going to be a redstone lamp because of because I remembered, oh right, I can just put a redstone lamp in that corner. So that's one change that I did do, but this side stayed the same with its redstone torch and the target block, as well as the enchantment table. The enchanting table has red on it, and it also has like the obsidian, such as the nether portal. So I figured it close enough. So, and then if we go over here, we have the Rosie cabin, which is the actual pink cabin instead of the pastel pink we saw earlier. So this cabin has, of course, the sapling cherry in a pot, but you also have the peonies on a dirt block with this cherry trapdoor. I did end up switching it to the rooted texture for that, so it looks like there's actual roots. And then I also have a mason person with a tulip. In the actual build itself, because I have placed some of these, I also have a stone. I also added a stone cutter to sort of represent the mason work that the person was enjoyed. So they could be maybe like a builder or something like that. So, and then Rosie and Ruby is just, those names are just because they reminded me of that color. So Ruby is red, and then of course Rosie is more of like a rosy red. And then Maggie is out the word magenta, at least because that's what the color is in English. So you just shorten it to Maggie. And so we have this crimson door leading into this room. I have another person who works with the loom because that's my go-to when I can't think of many good ideas. And then I also have this coral block, and so added that as well, and then I of course switched out the lights for this pearlescent light because it, with the nether wood, it adds a little more, it just bridges the gap. Even though technically this is more of like purple at the edges, it's close enough where it works. And speaking of purple, we have the Plum cabin, which uses these purple blocks as sort of the accent block, and of course I have amethyst block. So you have the actual budding amethyst block. Somehow this person got it into their room, and so you just have this area growing, and that actually had been growing throughout the entire world that this was on. So I just let it grow because it can. And of course there's amethyst on here too. Maybe they're friends, and so they've just given the gem. Either way, this person has a gem on top of their respawn anchor as well as a block of obsidian. I also added this like coarse flower plant in the back, but I had to use the coarse plant down here first, because otherwise if you just put the coarse flower there, eventually it'll just die. If you up the game speed, there you go. I was about to add, it just turns into this. So it's still the coarse flower, it just doesn't have the pretty petals. So I have the coarse plant, and then I can put the flower on top of there, and as far as I know, from what I've seen, it doesn't die. It just continues to exist. So technically I'm still experimenting on that, but it at least makes it last longer than I otherwise would have thought. And considering it was still in bloom when we walked in the room, I think we're good. And of course, I still have the pearlescent frog lights on top of the ceiling, because it just brings into that purple. So the more themed source of light other than just end rods. Next is our Cyan cabin, other known as the Zion cabin. Yes, it's just literally just because the words are somewhere in English, at least. And so you have this person who's more of an adventurer, so they somehow managed to get a beacon, a shulk screecher, and then they also have a soul lantern, as well as some of the nether wood stems. And then you also have another person who collects the cyan mole and works with it, but also the glow lichen, because I realized that the glow lichen is similar to the cyan terracotta color. Next is the Zuli cabin. I decided to go with a deep slate so I could have a good contrasting block, and because I knew I was going to have the prismarine for the next color, so I ended up using this deep slate, which I think works nice. Zuli comes from the word lapis lazuli, and if you see here, you actually have a lapis lazuli block as well as the ore version, specifically the deep slate ore to go with the deep slate theme. And then on this side you have sort of this dark blue glazed terracotta, and then you have the blue coral as well as the cornflower. So this person is very much into nature and building. Meanwhile, this one's more of just like, I want to go mining, which, you know what, fair. Next is the Skylar cabin, because it's named off of sort of like blue skies. However, I did bring in this prismarine blocks, so there is some the sort of ocean connection. This person is more of a explorer as well, because they have both copper and another beacon. Maybe they teamed up with the person from another cabin, as well as a soul lantern. And then over here you actually have blue ice. I wanted blue ice because then it wouldn't melt, because blue ice doesn't melt, at least in Minecraft doesn't, and I couldn't think of anything else for light blue, so because I'm trying to match their like hobbies with the colors itself. Next is the Coby cabin. Coby comes from cobblestone, which is this cobblestone that I used as sort of the accent color, because we don't have like any green woods, but we do have these mossy cobblestones, so I used the cobblestone. However, for the floor I actually had the moss because it was lighter, then it fits the lime cabin better, And on this side, you also get the drip leaf, like growing up, and then you also have the leaves. And I believe, yeah, and you have technically a hidden drip leaf in there. And then you also have slime blocks because they are sort of the lighter shade of green. And then you have a creeper head. So, and then of course you have the verdant frog lights because those are the green frog lights. And then here you have the last cabin, which is the Bruce cabin. Bruce, because spruce was used for the doorway and the hanging sign. I couldn't think of anything else, and I didn't think of anything else immediately. And then once it happened, and then once I realized, oh yeah, Bruce rhymes with spruce, I could not do it. It just wouldn't work in my brain. And like with the Coby cabin, I did use this mossy version of the stone variation. So I pulled that in. And so on this side, I have more of a person who's into plants, so they're growing vines, as well as this has a mangrove papagul. And then you have the cactus growing in pots. And then on the other side, you have more of an adventurer who has decided to package kelp for some reason, but also has a zombie head. And of course, I used the pearlescent lights. So, yeah, those are all of the different cabin types that I will be using in part of the map. The next time you will probably see the map is in probably a month, because I forgot that I'm going to the CubeCon, the online CubeCon thing next week, and so I'll be posting that as sort of a video. If I have something that I want to show, if I have the actual map done, I will showcase it as a map tour. Is somewhere in October before I do this tutorial video on how to play the game that I want to play, assuming I can get some players to play it. So yeah, I think that's everything for this video, so hope you have a good day. Thank you for watching, and I will try to leave time stamps down in the description, so if you ever want to reference a specific color for, say, your building and you want to reference a specific color, then I'll leave those timestamps down in the description. And I don't think there's anything else left for me to say, so thank you for watching and hope you have a good day. Goodbye.